Oh man, I am so pumped about this one. Coming up, an interview about one of my favorite songs of 1979. I think it's the coolest song of 1979, truly. Technically, this band is a one-hit wonder, but what a story behind this song. First of all, it sat on the shelf for years because the label was changing distributors, so it put it behind. And then a worker strike at the record plant might have kept it from being a number one hit because the factory couldn't print the record so that fans could even buy it. And then when it did become a hit finally, the band immediately broke up. And then a decade later, the song finally hit number one when it was used in an insurance commercial. Man, the long and winding story of a classic hit is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember waiting in line around the block to see that great summer blockbuster back in the day, you're going to dig this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. Click the bell so that you never miss an episode. And for even more content and behind-the-scenes footage, check us out on Patreon. And also take a look at our merch below. We have the Vintage Years collection as well as this Professor of Rock merch. It's right below. So it's time for another edition of our series, Bottled Lightning. This is where we celebrate a song that was king for a day, or for many days, even weeks. We honor artists and bands and that one glorious hit that they had that rocketed up the charts. For reasons unknown, they didn't have another hit. We all know them for the term one-hit wonder, but on here we try to step beyond that and honor them as lightning in a bottle, some of the great songs of all time. And today we go for a ride in the driver's seat with Sniff and the Tears, the number 15 U.S. Billboard hit from 1979 with original lead singer and songwriter Paul Roberts. Roberts is also a gifted painter. This was a perfect song for its time with a cool acoustic guitar opening. It turned into a 70s-like AOR guitar attack with a dollop, a sleek Moog synthesizer that was driving toward the future with irresistible background vocals. This was a song that stopped me dead in my tracks the first time I heard it. It's one of the best Bottled Lightning tunes of the late 70s for my money. And I got a chance to catch up with singer-songwriter Paul Roberts about the song, and he gave us some insight, including where the heck the band name Sniff and the Tears came from. Always thought that was a cool name. I don't usually like to ask the band name question, but this one's interesting. So as we go into this interview, I do want to thank our awesome sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I always jam here. With Zenni, you have styles for every single budget. You can do rimless glasses right now. You just pick your frames and then you choose from a variety of lens shapes, including rectangle, there's heart-shaped, so many others. Check it out today at zenni.com. Here's Paul Roberts on the driver's seat. Driver's Seat was really ahead of its time. It was one of the key tracks that ushered in new wave, in my opinion, at the dawn of the 80s, and an integral part of the album rock format, which was coming on strong in America at that period. And on the pop side, Driver's Seat was undoubtedly catchy, and it was fresh, and it just didn't sound like anything on top 40 radio at that time.
I think it's because, when we did the demos, it was sort of accidental. I mean, it was kind of it was a group of musicians who'd never played together before, and it was like, well, what can we do with this? So in that sense, we weren't sort of aiming to kind of be very commercial or do this or do that. It just kind of gained its own momentum, and in the end, everybody was saying, "Hey, this is good," but it wasn't kind of set out, it wasn't planned. Let's put it that way.
Well, so New Lines in Love, very cool track, but it failed to chart anywhere. The highest it got on the Billboard Hot 100 is number 108. And so kind of set the stage for that comeback single, and you were just a new band. But came the decision for that second single, which of course was Driver's Seat. What can I do? I'll never remember my time with Luigi was a big believer in the hit potential of Driver's Seat, and it sounds like you guys shared that belief.
Everybody did. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I'd had people before we even did before we did it. I mean, when I was singing that song in Paris in a restaurant, and another busker came up. He said, "Would you mind if I did that song?" He said, "I think that's a really great song." So it was sort of it was always a contender. It was in my mind, and I think so when we came to do the album, Lou certainly knew that was the one that we wanted to kind of get right.
Like I said, became an international hit in '79, but you were saying that the genesis of the song goes back to '73 when you were in a band called, I believe it was Ashes of Moon, right?
No, Ashes of Moon, that never existed. This was I did an interview with somebody back in the day, and they said, how did Sniff and the Tears come about? And I said, well, it came out of the Ashes of Moon, because the band that Luigi was in was called Moon. And that was, so I was just making a rather sort of metaphorical kind of distinction. But no, the original band that I had in the early '70s was when the song was first kind of written, was called Sniff and the Tears. We did play around the pub scene in London and all that, I'll never remember my time with you.
It's interesting because I've read so many different stories, and some have said Ashes of Moon, some have said Moon. I thought, well, maybe it started out as Moon, and then they changed the name. It's just so funny, the urban legends and the things.
No, Ashes of Moon's not a bad name, but it did.
No.
It didn't ever exist.
I don't usually talk about band names because I think that's a tired process that people ask, oh, how'd you get your name and everything? But I do think Sniff and the Tears is a very cool story about how you got your name.
Well, it's quite a long story. I mean, I won't go on too far with it, but it's in my sort of early 20s, I tried to write a dystopian novel, believe it, about the idea that some catastrophe happens in the world whereby that the only people left are basically Asian, Chinese and African, and the white race has been kind of decimated or disappeared. And there's this guy working in a place called The Records, and he discovers rock music by looking through old sort of things, and comes across this band called The Tears. And and so I sort of, when we came to try and choose a name, I was talking to my manager. I said, well, what about The Tears, And he said, well, why not Sniff and the Tears? Because I had hay fever. I was always sniffing. So he said, well, Sniff and the Tears might be better, and so that's how it came about. And I then sort of made it sniff like rock and roll. So, it was,
Well, Driver's Seat is ultimately a song about the range of emotions after a breakup. And I'd love to just ask you about some of the lyrics and break down the eloquence of these lyrics. The first verse is actually, people hear it wrong. It's doing all right, a little jiving on a Saturday night, which most people hear a little driving on a Saturday night.
A little jiving on a Saturday night.
And then the second verse, you sing about Jenny, who was sweet, but she had another way of looking at life.
The way I've sort of looked at it really was, Jenny was sweet. She always smiled for the people she knew.
She always smiled for the people she knew.
Basically a friendly woman who everybody fell in love with, including me, of course. And but she was not going to be anybody's, So she was on her own trip, really. That wasn't going to work out, really, and so it's my not that I had this great relationship, but that I could have had a great relationship, but it wasn't going to happen. That was the So yeah, more like that.
Well, I've always been intrigued by the line, "There is no elite."
To the trick of the beat, there is no elite.
What did you mean by that? I was always curious.
Well, I think people see things, see life in sort of in a kind of pyramid terms. You know, that there's a sort of scale, you know, where you find yourself in the scale. I just don't believe in that. I think you find yourself in yourself, not in relationship to other people and their success or failure, you know.
Just take your place in the driver's seat.
Well, the driver's seat, yeah, I mean, I think it just means not literally getting into a car, but just taking control of your own destiny. That's all. Yeah, you know, don't let other people, decide your life. You decide your own life.
Driver's seat. Driver's seat.
And your vocal on Driver's Seat, it has a unique dynamic shift. You sing some of the song in a contemplative style.
Gonna dance the day away.
And then you inject some intensely emotional emphasis in other parts, like the "Jenny was sweet," "There is no elite," pick up section before the bridge.
Yeah.
No elite. Yeah. Pick up your feet.
Did you fashion your style after a particular singer that inspired you, or?
Not really. No, I just thought that, because there was when we had originally, there was going to be a breakdown which went into the drum beat and then sort of worked its way up again. I just wanted a little bit of anger, to come into the play.
Pick up. Yeah.
You go from reflection to a bit of anger and then back to the resolve. So it was just that, really. And so it's sort of contemplating the way you turn stuff over in your mind when you're trying to kind of sort through the debris, and work out where you go from here. It's a mixture of emotions, really.
Dance the day away. Driver's seat.
Well, and speaking of the original band, Chris Birkin on bass and Laz Neto on guitar and Luigi, as we said, on drums, and he produced Fickle Heart as well. And then Mick, who sadly passed away in 2018, delivered the guitar intro for Driver's Seat. And you hear that intro today, like I was playing it the other day, my kids thought it was a new song. I mean, that is how great I feel like the recording was, because when you hear the acoustic guitar come in with that, it sounds brand new.
Well, that's good. That's nice to hear. Yeah.
The guitar work in Driver's Seat, I just think it's outstanding, including the solo and the song's outro. Give us kind of the behind-the-scenes crafting of those guitar parts.
Well, I mean, one of the things that happened, I mean, obviously, Loz was sort of playing, the more rhythmic parts, and the riff was Mick, the da-da-da-da-da-da, that was Mick. It's a very simple riff, but it's quite powerful. And originally, I mean, on the demo, it went right through the song, but Steve Lipscomb, who was the engineer on the, who did, got very involved in the whole thing, and he's since become quite a, successful producer. He's done Annie Lennox, all kinds of people. But he was, he and Bazza, who was the other, the engineer from Pathway, who Lou sort of said, he should come along because he was involved in the demos, and it'd be nice to have him there for a second opinion, And we hadn't got into the studio, and they'd sort of they kind of edited all the guitars out of the verses. So you had the riff, and then you went to the verse, and then so there was a lot more air. Basically, it wasn't so full on. And I think that created a dynamic which really, really worked, because then the piano kind of took over and you were just in the groove. So when the riff came back in, you got this lift, and so on you went,
I'll never remember my time.
yeah, that was kind of an important kind of, part of the way it came together, really. And then at the end, we sort of, everything drops out on this climatic kind of take your place in the driver's seat, and then, you just get the drum beat. Yeah, and then it all comes gradually back in. It's partly because, it was a song without a conventional chorus, it didn't really have that. So, it to sort of make it kind of episodic, so that there was a build that you just wanted to hear that, that progression again.
What also brings the mystery in is that electronic fluttering effect, right? That's the Moog synthesizer.
Keith did the synth work. He had a Moog synthesizer, which was, the thing in those days, and so he did all that, and that was new.
Noel McCullough, lead singer for the band Moon, delivered that baritone, I think, in the chorus before the bridge.
I've worked with Noel ever since, because he's a great singer. I mean, just on his own terms, but he's great. His voice goes really well with my voice, I think. So, he's my favorite backing vocalist,
It was a long rise to getting to that prominence, because like you said, it was a song that you played way back in the day, clear back in 1973, but you recorded it in the demo and everything. But I understand, though, that when it came out in the UK, they were on strike at the record.
Well, yeah, we did Top of the Pops, which is great. To do Top of the Pops, you're sort of guaranteed. But what happens is that everybody, this is the nature of pop music in those days when people bought records, was that you sort of, you rushed out and got it, but the EMI pressing plant went on strike at that precise moment. So you literally couldn't buy it, for sort of 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, you just couldn't get it. So it lost a lot of momentum, I think. And it really did. I think I think it was doing all right, which is why we did Top of the Pops. But then suddenly, you couldn't get it. And I mean, the album had already been delayed a year, because we made it, in '78, and quite early on, and it was delayed because the record company was changing its distributor. So
you had to wait a whole year.
We had to wait a whole year, which was awful, because a lot of the journalists then said, "Oh, they're trying to sound like Dire Straits." But actually, we did our album before Dire Straits did theirs, so that can't be true.
Going back to the Netherlands, though, Driver's Seat rose to number 4 on the first run in 1980 in that country, but had a pop culture renaissance in 1991 in Holland. Went all the way to number 1 so many years later.
The only place we were ever number 1, I think. That was fantastic. Yeah, no, I Holland is. I just literally a few months ago did a couple of gigs in Holland. Just before they locked down again. It was sort of, we did a couple of shows there. Just me and Les doing acoustic thing.
What are your feelings about Driver's Seat all these years later?
I've written a lot of songs since, but I mean, it's a song I still like. I mean, I'm never tired of playing it.
Hey, leaves a comment about Driver's Seat by Sniffing the Tears, a Bottle Lightning classic if there ever was one. What are your memories of this song? What do you think of it? Let us know in the comments below. If you dig our content, make sure to subscribe below so you never miss out on our videos.